Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful day. And wherever it is that you're joining us from around the world, thank you, as always, for all of your support. We appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows. Thank you so much for engaging with our amazing content and connecting with our magnificent guests. As always, this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for our sponsors. So thank you so much to Book Creator, EduAid, Yellow Dig, and Peelback Education. We appreciate you believing in our mission to bring these amazing conversations into the education space so we may continue to grow both professionally and personally. And I am excited about today's episode. I'm just going to tell you a little backstory. So I've been on break this whole week. And all of a sudden, I think it was either Friday or on a Saturday, all of a sudden I see my great friend Tisha putting up a post about some great news. And immediately I jumped on it. I got onto TikTok. I got on a DM and said, hey, would you love to be on the show? And I'm excited to have her on the show today. So, guys, I want to introduce you to Tisha Richmond, who is joining me this morning here on My EdTech Live. Tisha, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's so wonderful to be on your show. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, I've been looking forward to it too, because like I said, just the subject matter of your book, what you're going to be talking about today and sharing with the world today is something that as of late, like for some reason, like I just got into this like CTE mode and just wanting to
Mhm.
learn more. What can we do to improve the programs? What can we do to help our students out even more within, the career technology education fields? And of course, just to kind of talk about and do away with maybe some misconceptions that may be out there about CTE and things of that sort. So when, like I said, when I saw your post and your most recent release, I was like, I gotta have Tisha on because I know she is doing some fantastic work within her classroom. And we're going to be talking about your amazing framework, your magical framework, which I'm excited to learn more about because just in the little warm up chat that we had, I was like, this is just mind blowing. And just the fact that you took your time to go through that and be very intentional with that process and that framework, I was like, yes, this is amazing. So,
Yeah.
Tisha, for our audience members that are joining us today or listening today that may not be familiar with your work yet or haven't connected with you yet, can you give us a little brief education and, excuse me, a little brief introduction and what your context is within the education space?
Yes, absolutely. So I have been in education since 1996. So a long time. And most of those years have been in the current technical education classroom. I taught for 5 years in San Diego, came to Oregon, was full-time mom for a few years, and then jumped back into the classroom again, teaching current technical education, specifically interior design and culinary arts. Went on teaching for another 17 years, took a brief jump outside of the classroom for 5 years and got to explore tech integration. I was our district's tech integration specialist, supporting teachers K through 12 and how to bring innovative ideas and technology into the classroom. I had a 3-year opportunity to work with Canva for education, and I was a Canva learning consultant, getting to work with educators from around the world and how to bring Canva into classroom learning. And then last year, I had this kind of unexplainable tug on my heart to return to the classroom again, teaching culinary arts at the rival school across town from where I taught before. And it was truly unexplainable. It was just not something I was looking for. The opportunity was there. And I jumped very quickly, a week before school started, into this role. In fact, I didn't even spend the first 3 weeks with my students because I was tying up some loose ends with my previous job. So, it's been a wonderful journey in education. I'm so grateful for every experience that I've had. I've had the amazing opportunity to publish through Dave Bridges Consulting some books that are near and dear to my heart. I've had the opportunity to present around the world to educators on topics that are near and dear to my heart. So, I'm grateful for it all. I truly am.
Oh, that is wonderful. The experience that you've had, and like you mentioned, seeing the classroom, seeing what it's like, outside the classroom as, tech integrationist, and then of course your time through Canva as well, and then, coming back into the classroom, sometimes I feel that uh, those perspectives really help out a lot, and just seeing things through different lenses helps so much that now, like you said, you felt that tug and you came back to the classroom. I'm sure that now things, although maybe you're teaching the same thing in culinary arts, but now things look different. Now you come in with
Mhm.
this renewed vision and a renewed sense of like, what can I do? Because now you've kind of seen it all, and now you're kind of bundling all that knowledge that you not only gave to teachers, that but you also learned from them, and now bringing it back into the classrooms, and now your students get to reap the and sow that knowledge that you're pouring
Mhm.
into them, and that's something that is wonderful and amazing, and especially with culinary arts, that's, to be honest with you, if I could go back in time, I would probably, like, would love to have been a chef, because I'm just a huge foodie and I love to watch all those, like, chef competitions and everything, and, so it's just fantastic. So, tell me now a little bit more. I wanna talk, you mentioned, you published some books, and, so I want to talk a little bit about that. As far as your publishing that you've done, what has been the motivation, or what was, the influence behind those books, and to just put that out into the world?
Yeah, so, every book that I have written is truly just such a part of my heart, a piece of my heart, because they all tell a different story. And my first book, that is called Make Learning Magical, was really about how I went from a teacher that was burnt out, kind of ready to throw in the towel, and how I was able to really transform what teaching looked like for me and how I could create unforgettable experiences for students. It was really my manifesto. It was my story of how of that journey and what those 7 keys were that really unlocked the magic in my classroom. So that was just an incredible opportunity for me to be able to share that story, hoping that I could help others that may have been feeling that they're in that same position. Maybe they're ready to throw in the towel too, and how I was able to reinvigorate my joy, respark my joy, and really hoping that that might do the same for other educators. Really, I'm speaking from a career and technical educator standpoint, but I really wrote it for all educators to be able to do that. The Dragon Smart book that I wrote with my son is a gosh, I can't even express how special that story is to me because we wrote it together. I wrote the story based on his educational journey, and then he came alongside and brought all of the stories, all the lines of that story to life with his amazing illustrations. And it was an opportunity really to come, I don't know, for his story to come full circle, because here I am writing the story about his educational journey and how his brilliance may not show up like every other student's brilliance, or it may not be really acknowledged in grades or good test scores. However, really highlighting all the ways that he is brilliant. And it's a conversation between a mom and a son about um, how how he shines in ways that maybe the world doesn't always recognize. And so to see him learn how to truly learn how to draw and illustrate through the process of writing this book and then have it released to the world has been the most amazing bonding experience for my son and I. And for him also to realize, wow, his story matters and he can share this story with the world and now see the impact it's going to have on kids across the globe. And truly have heard those stories where, parents will write us and say, oh my goodness, like I can't even tell you how this story touched my daughter or my son, or how it just really spoke to me as an adult, right? And so, oh my gosh, that has been an amazing journey with my son. We've been able to present at conferences together. We've been able to do read alouds in classrooms, virtually and in person. So that's been incredible. I did write an ebook that I collaborated with John Crippo and Marlena Hepburn. It's the Edge Protocols Companion Guide, where I created Canva templates to go along with their Edge Protocols Book 1. And so that was such a different experience, right? Because it wasn't, um, an educational book like Make Learning Magical. It wasn't a picture book like Dragon Inspired. This was a guide that went along with an incredible book. And so collaborating with that was amazing. And then this recent book, The Magical CTE Classroom, again, is so near and dear to my heart because it's truly speaking from my current technical educator lens. And I've been in this world for a long time, and really helping give some tools to educators on really how can we bring that play, innovation, and joy into our classrooms, because career technical education is so vital and so important. And I want to help educators see how we can infuse some of this playful learning in a really meaningful way that is really going to help them as they move from our classrooms into this real world of work, how it can really be powerful.
Oh, I love that. And especially, now diving in a little bit more into this conversation is just something that is exciting, and especially about your most recent release. And to me, that gets me really excited because the way that you talk about this throughout your experience, and then um, oftentimes, and again, this is just me and my experience, and I don't know about your experience, in the previous schools that you were in, and now in your current school, but it just seems like oftentimes CTE teachers are kind of siloed and kind of left out.
Mhm.
Sometimes we just focus more on that core curriculum, on whatever's going to be state tested. And so
Yeah.
we
Mhm.
focus more on that math, reading, science, and social studies. And then oftentimes we just forget that there is also a curriculum for, CTE for the teachers. And when, being in a role as a digital learning coordinator for many years, oftentimes the comments or the questions were, well, what about us, Mr. Mendoza? Like, why don't we get to go or do these trainings and do all of this? Why isn't there anything available for us as far as, just tech integration or finding great ways to that
Mhm.
things that you can implement into classrooms? So I love the fact that you're bringing your experience and that lens into the CTE classroom, and like you mentioned, making that learning enjoyable, interactive, fun, where the students truly feel like creators and not just those consumers, and really taking it to that next level. So I want to ask you, so I know that this is Make CTE Magical, or the Magical CTE Classroom, sorry. And
Sure.
so what where did that come from? Was it something that you were seeing too? Like, hey, you know what? Like CTE doesn't always have to be just this cut and dry, or, just tell me a little bit how the book came to fruition.
Behind every classroom door, there's a story of patience, creativity, and the quiet power of shaping the next generation. Peel Back Education shines a light on these lived experiences, the real voices of educators on the front lines. Don't just subscribe to Real Voices, discover them, connect with them, and maybe even share your own too. Visit peelbackeducation.com to discover the stories shaping education and the people just like you living them every day.
Yeah. So, my original book, Make Learning Magical, again, was a book that really kind of talked about how I was able to respark the joy in my own teaching. I was kind of at this point in my career where I was going through the motions. Like, I had been teaching for a while. Like, I was pretty dialed in. Like, I knew how to teach. However, I wasn't enjoying it. I had lost my joy for it. And I think in return, whatever emotion we bring into the classroom is contagious, right? So if we're not excited about what we're teaching and we're not bringing that joy into the classroom, our students aren't going to probably be as joyful about learning it. And so um, it really truly transformed what the learning landscape looked like for me as well as my students. And so the magical CTE classroom is really making that accessible, where I feel like Make Learning Magical was the story and really kind of breaking down those 7 keys. And I do have some great strategies in that book as well. the magical CTE classroom is just giving so many ideas and strategies that teachers can take and use right away. So I want this book to be bookmarked. I want there to be Post-it notes all the way through it, and for teachers to be able to flip through, oh yeah, I want to try this one, or hey, I want to try this. I also really wanted to reach that CTE educator that maybe is coming straight from industry. So many teachers in CTE are not going through the 4-year teaching program and they're coming from industry. So they might be getting their CTE credential, after, like, they've had this full career, maybe 20, 30 years in a career in the industry, and now are jumping into education. And so they are having to kind of backfill and find those strategies and really try to learn all of the lingo that comes along in education. And I really wanted to provide some simple unit and lesson frameworks for those educators to be able to see, like, this is how I structure my classroom. This is how I kind of build a lesson. This is how I can infuse that joy right in. And some of the tried and true, just foundational pieces that has really helped me create this CTE learning atmosphere that is very lab-based and hands-on. And like you said, a lot of times in our PD programs within our districts, it's speaking to the core subject areas. We're not learning what it looks like when you're in a classroom with moving parts and hot burners and, power tools, and students are moving and they're not sitting for very long at all. My class is very lab based. My students are up and they're moving, and it takes intention to create a learning atmosphere where students are creating, collaborating, communicating from beginning to end, right? And again, with hot burners, power tools, like things that could potentially be dangerous. And so I really wanted to help teachers that are in career and technical education, whatever career pathway they might be teaching. I wanted them to have kind of this access to what that structure can look like and how we truly can make it a joyful learning atmosphere.
Oh, that is great. I think you hit the nail on the head on something there that I didn't even think about too, which is, like you mentioned, a lot of the educators that are coming into the classroom that are CTE, they're coming in exactly like you said, like from industry. And that kind of took me back to when I first stepped into the classroom. I mean, I came into industry, but I mean, I went into one of the core subjects, and yeah, it was a very interesting thing that, you're having to learn how to teach while you're teaching. And luckily I had some amazing mentors that really helped out and really helped me understand, how, just really pedagogy and all the standards
Right.
and how to unpack that. And so that is really helpful. So now, like you mentioned, this is a wonderful resource talking about how many new teachers are coming into that CTE, kind of pathway and career pathways that are teaching there that don't have that, I guess you would say the 4-year education background, going in as educators. And now they have a wonderful resource that they can have on hand to try out within the lessons that they may have, the curriculum they may have, and embed it in such a way to make that learning, like you mentioned, memorable, make it actionable, make it something that's long lasting. And I think that this is great that there's finally the resource. And I'm really excited about that because now I'm like, hey, maybe I should, kind of share this also there with our district leaders and say, hey, maybe do some kind of book study or be able to, do some kind of professional development based on those things, and seeing how the teachers may be able to integrate into, and like I always say, sprinkle it onto what they are already doing great, and then just to really take that lesson to that next level. And so that way the students too enjoy it and they enjoy it, because like you mentioned, one thing that's something very important too, that attitude that you kind of bring in is kind of like what is also going to set the tone for for the class and the course. So I think that that's something that's great. Now, one thing that I would love for you to share is I just learned it right now from our pre chat that actually magical is a framework that you came up with. So maybe our audience and our listeners listening to this were not familiar with that. So would you be able to tell us a little bit more about your framework and expand on that? So that way our listeners, whether they're in CTE or not CTE, but can share this, out and be able to say, hey guys, I just heard this show and here's a book, that can help you as a CTE teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I shared before, as a teacher that was kind of ready to call it quits, I was able to really kind of respark my joy and really be able to transform things. And when I really sat down to think about, well, what was it? Like, what were the keys that really helped unlock that joy again in my classroom learning? And when I really sat down and thought about it, it broke down into these 7 keys: memorable beginning, authenticity and agency, gamified experiences, innovation, creativity, collaboration, and curiosity, authentic audience, and legacy. And so, I, again, in that original book, I break down what each of those different keys mean and what it looked like to be able to unlock those keys in my classroom, and kind of how you, as an educator, can unlock that in your classroom too. And then in the Magical CTE classroom, I really kind of build off of that framework to really be able to show teachers how you can set up your unit and your lesson plans with that framework, and then some really actionable strategies that you can use right away to be able to tap into those different keys as well. And I really feel that this book, a lot of the strategies are going to be able to be used across the board, but I really wanted to speak from my perspective as a career and technical educator, and really speak to career and technical education, because I feel like we talked about before, oftentimes there isn't a lot of resources and books and PD that are speaking to those that are in these career and technical based classrooms. And that was really important to me to feel like I could provide that to educators in this space.
Oh, and I think that's great. And such a great framework. And one of the things that I mentioned to you even pre-chat too was just how thoughtful that framework is. And it just hits on so much that we normally do in whatever classroom you may be in. That framework is definitely something that would be very useful, like you mentioned, for straight across the board. But I'm glad that there is something now, like you mentioned, a resource that we can share with our CTE teachers that can feel like, hey, this is for me. This is specifically for me. Now I have something where I can go ahead and learn from too as well, and implement and just really take my classroom to that next level. And those ideas, like you mentioned, that they can go through and, say, hey, you know
Mhm.
what, maybe this 6 weeks or this 9 weeks, I'm going to try this activity, or what, let's see how I can implement this next activity. And then they kind of just start owning it and seeing where it is that might be able to fit into their curriculum, and just kind of ease into it. And then before you know it, it's like, hey, they get reinvigorated. Like you mentioned, it's like now the learning kind of, even though you may be teaching the same thing, but the experience is different now. Like you said, they feel more
Mhm.
comfortable. The students are engaged in a different manner, in a different way. And I think that that alone too also really helps an educator out just feel like, wow, this is great. Things are going better. It was a small tweak, but it was an effective tweak that
Yeah.
made and enhanced the learning. And now students are able to understand the concept better, or now they're creating, or now I'm seeing their thought process in a different way too as well. So I think that that's great. So I want to ask you, Tish, if you can you give us maybe one example from your book that you might be able to share, just as a preview for our audience members that are going to jump on the link and order your book?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I dive into is a little bit about how we can create games around the vocabulary and terminology in our courses. Um, because oftentimes, I mean, our courses are full of terminology, right? We are teaching terms straight from industry that are going to be really essential for them to understand and to be able to use. And so one of the things that I love to do is find games that allow us to be able to teach that vocabulary acquisition in a fun and engaging way. Because they're using it in lab-based settings, but to really truly understand what those terms are and to be able to practice that takes intention. And so I have created a whole section in this book that really takes a set of vocabulary cards. So like you might just on an index card write all of your vocabulary terms. You can use that same stack of index cards to be able to create these fun games for learning that vocab. And so I have a whole section that is just called Words at Play, reimagining vocabulary through games. So I have a game called Time's Ticking. I have one that's inspired by the headbands game, where you wear the headband with the word, called Top of Mind. I have a game that I created inspired by Cranium called The Wild Unicorn. So it's chock full of these games that you can use to teach vocabulary. And then every game not only gives instructions, a lot of them have a QR code that leads to a template that you can use. And I also have why this works. And so for each game, I break down like why this works for vocabulary acquisition and CTE. So you can really think about, okay, this is what I'm really wanting to work on with my students. Like this is definitely a game that I want to try to bring in.
Nice. I love it. And you know what? That's a nice spin too, because oftentimes, like I said, it's these classes are so intense. And like you mentioned, right now, as you were mentioning, vocabulary, I was thinking about, our nursing classes that we have, or,
Yeah.
where the students are there and they're having to learn, just words that I have never seen, that sometimes I can't
Yeah.
even pronounce, but just to take it to that next level where instead of just sitting there the way you normally do, just through repetition and through matching or just outright just sitting there, rote memorization. We don't want that rote memorization. Like we want the students to really, own those words and really learn the words. And I think that just having that little tweak, like you mentioned, and all those options that you offer the teachers, that's something that is great where, like I mentioned, they can do that the first 6 weeks. They can practice before a test. They can review
Mhm.
continually. I was thinking, they can do their times ticking, as soon as they come in, they practice that depending on the length of their classes and so
Yep.
on. And just so as the students go throughout the year, those vocabulary words are always present and they're always
Mhm.
there, for them to practice. So, things like that make a huge difference. And not like I mentioned, not like, and like you mentioned too, not just for CTE, but really for all classrooms where you're learning vocabulary. And I think that's something that is great. So again,
Yeah.
wonderful resource because now even myself just coming in, I would say, this right here is if you give me this as an educator, now I have options and now I can pick and choose what I feel comfortable with and what I might be able to implement. And now when my teachers will ask, Mr. Mendoza, like, is there anything for us? Why, yes, there is. And let me tell you a little bit about it. And here's what can be done. And I think that would be great just to have as a resource on hand for any CTE educator to just have there on their desk, like you mentioned, bookmarking, making notes. And now this is how I would implement this into this section of my curriculum or this section of the lesson and so on. And I think that's fantastic. All right,
Oh, thank
Tisha, I
you.
want to ask you now just a little, getting away from the book talk just a little bit,
Mhm.
as like I mentioned to you, my experience is CTE, and that I've seen, it's oftentimes, it just feels a little apart, a little set apart from like the focus on the main content that, and, or core curriculum, as far as the math, the reading, the sciences, and so
Mhm.
on. But I want to ask you, in your experience, what might be some barriers or obstacles that CTE teachers may face, other than the ones that we just talked about right now, where they might feel like there aren't any resources for us? And since you've lived it and you've done it for many years, have things gotten a little bit better, or is it still something that you feel like you still need to go outside and start looking and finding resources?
Howdy, y'all. It's Farmer Fobbs from Book Creator. Now listen up, partner. If you're wrangling lesson plans and trying to keep your students engaged, I got just the tool for you. Now remember, every student and teacher deserves a yeehaw moment, and Book Creator can give you just that. Book Creator makes it easy to get your students creating, collaborating, and sharing their ideas all in one place. Book Creator turns any classroom into a digital frontier, whether it's interactive notebooks, portfolios, or good old storytelling. Now, did I tell you it plays nice with all the other favorite apps? Egg Smash it. I mean App Smash it with Adobe, Google, and much more to take creativity to greener pastures. So saddle up and give it a try. Use promo code MyEdTechLife for a 3-month special treat.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like CTE has become a little bit more front and center over the years, over the recent years. But there are so many different pieces and parts to career and technical education that a lot of people don't think about. One is just the Perkins funding. A lot of our programs are funded through federal Perkins funding, and there are specific requirements to be able to be eligible as a Perkins program. So that's one piece that we're navigating. Our classrooms have equipment, right? There's upkeep of equipment. There is things that we have to do, like grocery shop, right? Like in my class, that's a huge piece. Like I'm at the store at 6 a.m. At least 1 to 2 times a week, going grocery shopping for class, and like having to do inventory on that. So having to keep up, those consumables and making sure that I'm staying within budget. We have budgets within our programs that we have to stay within and have to budget for. Programs have articulations often with community colleges or colleges to get college credit. There are a lot of very diverse learners in our classrooms, right? And we want to make sure that we're creating an atmosphere that really is inclusive of all of the learners that we have, and trying to navigate that and can be really tricky. And then we touched on this earlier, but just the safety aspect, because we are teaching students how to use tools that are out there in the industry. There is safety that goes along with that, and really helping ensure that students are safe and we're able to create a continued safe environment with a lot of students within that space. So, my classes are up to 34 students. And so when you think about that, you have 34 students in a space with lots of moving parts. It's really important to create a structure that is going to support meaningful learning, but be able to do so in a way that we're taking into account the safety aspect of that, and creating an environment where every student feels like not only they are included, but that they are safe within that space.
Yeah,
So
no.
there's a lot of pieces to it for sure.
Oh, definitely. And like you mentioned, also like the funding aspect, and with so many changes, and like you mentioned, there's so much compliance too as far as funding. Like, the money has to be spent a certain way or by a certain time, and things of that sort. And yeah, definitely a lot of moving parts, not only for leadership, but also on the teacher side of it, making sure that students are ready, maybe even for a certification and things of that
Yes.
sort. So that's kind of my next question to you also as well. Industry certification, I sometimes, like you mentioned, it is coming a little bit more front and center. And just we were talking a little bit about the importance of even looking at those options of having industry certification, somebody graduating and has maybe 1 or 2 industry certifications, and they're ready to
Mhm.
go into the workforce and those advantages. And so I want to ask you, through your lens and then your experience that you've seen,
Mhm.
do you feel that that industry certification is something that is very beneficial to students that may be coming in or coming in, outside of high school? And how have you seen that, work for maybe some of your students?
Yeah. So, first of all, my students get their food handler's card like pretty much straight out of the gate. That's like one of the very first things that we do in my class is get their food handler's card. And that's a very real, applicable thing
Yeah.
for our students because many of my students are working in the food industry right away, right? They're wanting to work either as a barista at a local coffee shop or they're working at McDonald's, fast food. I mean, so many different jobs that students are going to have in high school are going to require that food handler's card. And so um, that is something that is immediate connection and immediately students are keyed into because they already know that's something that they're going to need. There are a lot of programs we are not offering it now, but there are programs within culinary that offer ServeSafe, which is just kind of a step up from the food handlers certification. And I think it depends too on what's available in your area and what community colleges, like what those articulation requirements are requiring. And it requires that you have, in some instances, the equipment to support it. So in order to get those certifications, students are having to show that they have used the specific equipment that is needed. And every career pathway has those different requirements and those different certifications that are going to make sense. But I think it's super valuable for our kids to be able to come out of high school having those certifications. And I also think of just employability skills in general are so important to teach. And that's something that I think about every day when I'm in my classroom and I'm just kind of seeing, all the wheels in motion and I'm seeing my students learning and I'm watching them communicate with each other. I'm watching them collaborate with each other effectively. They're problem solving. They're having to troubleshoot when maybe something goes wrong or maybe they added that extra tablespoon of something. They're having to figure out, okay, what can we do to remedy this or what would we do different next time if we were to. So all of those pieces and then allowing students to demonstrate their learning in creative ways. I love that about my class is that I can teach them the foundational skills. I can teach them the methods, but then empowering them. Okay, now you know the method. Show me what you can do with this method. So I might teach them how to make a pie crust, but then maybe kind of as their end of unit challenge, I'm giving them the formula. They have to show me that they can make a pie crust without the instructions, and then they have to make it into something amazing. And so now they're all coming together creatively, collaborating and thinking about what are the possibilities for this. And they feel so empowered doing it. And then, you bring in the authentic audience, you bring in staff members to come and now judge and give feedback on that thing that they've created. And now you truly see that learning come alive. And those are all transferable workplace skills. I mean, it doesn't matter, where you're going to be working. We need to help students be creative learners, problem solvers, collaborators. We need to teach students how to communicate effectively. And so I look at it as a win-win, whether or not my students are going on to a career in hospitality or culinary. I know that in my class, I'm preparing them for a world of work. And that is such an amazing feeling to be able to see those skills in action.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, just on everything that you hit on, that goes on in the classroom, and
Mhm.
especially the collaborative aspect, that communication skills is so important, all those soft skills that we mentioned, but just the critical thinking, being able to problem solve, and especially like you
Yeah.
mentioned, with that task of, okay, create something, based on what you've learned. And now you maybe your own rendition or your own recipe or something that, taking it to that next level. And then for them to have to go through that creative process, go back and remember all the learning that they've done, and then put that into action and now create something. And then you mentioned giving them an authentic audience where it may be you, it may be other teachers, it may be their peers that now are tasting, are doing all of that. And now they get out of there and they're going into actual workforce and bringing those skills into that, whatever, like you mentioned, whether it's a coffee shop, whether it's a restaurant, wherever it may be. And now it just seems like they can easily, transfer those skills into that workplace and be effective right away because, like you mentioned, one of the things too, they'll already have their food handler's license at an early stage. So that's already one less barrier to entry for a job that may be seeking as far as it, anything handling food. And then bringing in those additional skills, I think that will definitely go a long way in preparing them. So I think that's fantastic, Tisha, and that's wonderful, the work that you're doing. And I just thank you for that continued work and obviously for this amazing resource. So Tisha, if you can let us know, I know you mentioned that this was done through DBC Publishing, through Dave Burgess. Can you tell us where our audience might be able to find the book and where they might be able to order it and how they may be able to connect with you?
Absolutely. Well, you can find the books on Amazon and on Barnes and Noble. But if you go to Amazon and you just type in my name, Tisha Richmond, no R in Tisha, just Tisha Richmond, you're going to find all the books that are going to come up. And the very top one will be the Magical CTE Classroom. And I'm just so grateful to DBC for trusting me with all of these projects. Again, each book is near and dear to my heart, and I truly hope that it resonates with all of the readers. And you can find me in all of the social media platforms. I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram at Tish Richmond. I'm on X at Tish Rich. I'm on TikTok at Tisha Richmond. So, everyone is slightly different. It's a little tricky. And you can find me on Facebook as well. I'm trying to be better on TikTok. So I have some plans in the coming year to kind of expand my presence there. I also have a YouTube channel that I'm going to try to be a little bit more consistent in bringing some content to, and that is Tisha Magic. And then I have a blog at tisharichmond.com where I have blogs written all the way back to about 2015 and just kind of sharing my educational journey. And I share resources there as well. So lots of different places that you can connect with me.
Awesome. Excellent. And we will make sure and we link all that info in our show notes, guys. That way guys can definitely connect with Tisha. And I promise you, she, as amazing as you hear her now in person, she is equally amazing, just wonderful and just so full of knowledge and always just smiling and just being very joyous. So thank you so much, Tisha, for being here today. And a big shout out to DBC also for the work that they're doing and not only publishing your content, but I mean, just the amazing authors that they've been working with too as well. So we'll make sure and link them on the show notes too as well. That way you can check out all those wonderful books and resources that you can get on hand. And just like I always say, the things that you can sprinkle onto what you are already doing great. But Tisha, before we wrap up, I always love to end the show with the last 3 questions. And if you have been listening to the shows, and you'll be very familiar with those questions. But let's start off with question number 1. And I want to ask you, in the current state of backstory here, as we know, every superhero has a pain point or a weakness. So for Superman, kryptonite was his greatest weakness. So I want to ask you, in the current state of education, what would you say would be your current kryptonite? That pain point, that thing that just makes you like go, oh gosh.
Well, I think one of the things that I struggle with is my passion is education. And so sometimes I just want to be in it all the time. Like the weekends I'm in education. I want to every time I watch a show, I'm thinking about how it transfers to learning. Every time I play a game, I think it transfers to learning. And so if anything, I think my kryptonite is just being able to just shut down sometimes and just do something completely, separate to where I'm not thinking about education because it truly is a passion of mine. And I love finding ways to make learning magical for everybody.
I love it. That is a great answer. And I might echo that sentiment too as well, where sometimes I just need to learn how to shut down a little bit. But like I tell people, like this fills my bucket. This is where I just feel
Does.
great and being able to interview some amazing people. And so sometimes it's just very hard to shut that off. And then especially like even on break, I batched, this is gonna be like I think the sixth episode that I record this week, but just because
Wow.
it's the time where I get to, it's almost like I refill my bucket, like,
Yeah.
and it just feels great. But I do agree with you. Sometimes I just need to kind of like shut that down a little bit and then just relax. But yeah. All right. Question number 2. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
So I have this saying, it's actually on this necklace here that says no risk, no magic. And when I
Mm.
think back on my educational journey, I think about the fact that it's been made up of lots of risks along the way and stepping out of my comfort zone, whether that's trying something new in my classroom or that's writing a blog post or a book or trying out what podcasting looks like. And I'm so grateful because through that, I have become so much more confident, so much more courageous, and it's led to so much magic. And so I encourage educators to just step out there and take those little risks because each risk leads to a bigger risk and more magic.
There you go. Great. I love it. And the last question, Tisha, is if you could trade places with a person, any person, for a single
Gosh.
day, who would that be and why?
You know what? I was thinking about this question this morning, and this might sound funny, but I love Jimmy. I love the Late Show with Jimmy Fallon. And I think, like, I don't think I'd want to switch places with Jimmy Fallon because, like, that is why I love the show, is because I just think he's so funny and I just love how he engages with his audience and with his guests. But I think it would be fun just to be able to switch places with somebody who works closely on that show. And so then you get to meet like all of these super interesting and fascinating, talented people. And then I just feel like I would laugh a lot because I just think he's super funny. So that's what I would say.
Love it. Well, thank you, Tisha, so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and be on the show and tell us all about your wonderful book. And I'm just so excited for your success in this book. And I definitely look forward to seeing this out there on many CTE teachers' desks, even though it's not just for CTE, because I know the magical learning can take place everywhere. But I think it's something that is great that CTE teachers can feel like, wow, there's something out there specifically for me. And thank you for just really thinking about that and bringing it into the world. I really appreciate it. And I wish you continued success in everything that you do, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Such a joy to be with you. I appreciate it.
Excellent. And for all our audience members, please make sure you visit our website at myedtech.life where you can check out this amazing magical episode and the other wonderful episodes where I promise you, like I keep saying, you'll find a little something that you can sprinkle on to what you are already doing great. So please make sure you visit our website. And as always, thank you for all of your support. Big shout out to our sponsors, Book Creator, Eduate, Yellow Dig, and Peel Back Education. We really appreciate you supporting us. And if you're interested in being a sponsor, please make sure that you drop us a message because the new year is filling up. So we would definitely be excited to have you on board as well. But again, thank you as always for your support. And until next time, my friends, don't forget, stay techie.